Welcome to the 2019 WinTax Highlights webinar. I'm Scott Dalton and I am one of the lead developers here at Taxware. Out of all the training webinars and seminars, this is probably my favorite of the year because I get to introduce some of the new enhancements and additions that we've made to the programs. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, first, not so much an enhancement, but just to be aware, the IRS obviously redesigned their 1040. The 1040 line input, of course, has been redesigned to match the new 1040. Schedules 1 and 6 have been consolidated to 3 schedules, and Schedule D has been moved from Schedule 1 to the front page. And basically, the postcard design is not supported by the IRS anymore. They were all longer, and they've kind of gone away from that concept. And this is basically what the new 1040 looks like. Just so you know, I don't know if you've looked at the new schedules 1 through 3 in the 1040. They are available on irs.gov under their draft section for their forms if you want to preview. And you can kind of take a closer look. But as you can see, in line 6, they pulled the capital gains section out of Schedule 1 and moved it right to the front page. And then, of course, they've consolidated the schedules 1 through 6 on 1 through 3. Probably one of the biggest projects that we've had over the summer is still continuing to convert our legacy states, which is what you see on the left-hand side of the screen, to our next-gen states, which is what you see on the right-hand side. Both of these are Idaho. Most of these states are now native to next-gen. We only have, I believe, 2 or 3 that are left to be slated to be converted from the legacy to the next-gen format. And then, of course, one of our big projects, we'll talk about it a little bit later, is we have converted our corporate and our S-Corp programs into the next-gen format. And about half of those states are converted to the next-gen format. So what this means to you is basically the transition time between the Fed and the state is slightly shorter in the native next-gen format, but it also increases the better integration of and flow between the print and the e-file attachments and some of the other things. Other than that, it's just kind of something that we needed to get done. It's pretty extensive to convert all of the states into the new format. Some of the other big changes are federal QBI. When we were at the Software Developers Conference, they had originally told us that the Section 199A worksheets were going to be what the forms were called, or worksheets were going to be called, and they were just going to keep those the same. They've obviously gone away from that and named their forms 8995 and 8995A and the coinciding worksheets. Last year, the Section 199 worksheets did not get e-filed. They were just basically the total was just transmitted. This year, the worksheets where the 8995s will be e-filed and validated and have business rules attached to that, so just kind of be aware of that. The other big change was that the 8995 has been added to the fiduciary program for complex trusts that basically aren't distributing the overall 199 information to the beneficiaries through their K1s. And you'll see that right on the front page of the 1041. And to match that, we basically took what we had in the 1040 system and put it in the 1041 system as far as the Schedule C, F, and E. It's going to include basically the same flow as the 1040 program. And here's a screen of what that will look like. Basically, this is the 1041 Schedule C, where you can mark whether it's a qualified business, and then your overall totals get totaled up and put into our QBI container that can either be elected to distribute via the K1s to the beneficiaries, or your complex trust have the option to to go to the front page. And this is really nice because during the tax season, we did field a few calls of people that had a 1041, and they're like, where do we put the QBI information? And there just wasn't much information from the IRS on where to put it. We gave them some ideas, but they didn't really have too much direction. So now they've obviously heard that feedback, and there's a line item right on the 1041 itself. All right, let me just check and see if there are any chats. No, I think we're fine. Okay, automatic updating. I think you're really going to like this enhancement. NextGen will automatically detect when updates are available, and they're not going to automatically pop up the window while they're checking. So this means that you're not going to have a window when there doesn't need to be one. It's only going to pop up when an update is available and needs to be applied. The program will then, of course, ask if you want to apply it, and you can still say no if you're like right in the middle of a tax return or just right in the middle of things and just don't want to deal with an update. But we did make the change that the IRS does want us to basically force an update after a certain amount of time. So we put in the business rule that will allow basically 2 weeks, and then we're going to force you to do an update. And then we've also added the same updating system applied for the business programs. So it's available and included in the 1120, 1120S, 1041, and 1065 programs as well. So I think that'll be a little bit nicer as far as updating your systems. We do advise that you update regularly at the beginning of the tax season. As I'm sure you're aware, we're getting adjustments to states, we're getting state approvals, we're making and adding forms. So at the beginning of tax season, you're probably still going to see updates daily. And we encourage you to get those. We're changing e-file schemas and all sorts of things, especially at the beginning of the tax season. So please update your systems. I'm sure you're aware that that's like one of the very first questions when you call for technical support. Our customer support staff will ask you, are you up to date and what's your version number, so they can see what's fixed and what hasn't been fixed. Okay, due diligence. I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time on this because I think it's really nice. It's a great feature. I'm sure you guys love filling out the 8867 due diligence information as much as I do. It is important to verify this information, but let's be honest, it's kind of a pain in the neck. So we've spent a lot of time this year improving the speed of both gathering the information and inputting the information. So we've switched the used to be a box selection trying to stick with our mouse-free options. You can still use those, and I'll show you how to use those in just a minute in the program. But we've switched those to use radio buttons. So if you're using the mouse, it's just a little bit faster to check boxes. We've also added two kind of important tools. And it's up to you on how you want to run your office as far as your level that you feel it is correct as far as completing the 8867 information. But the first option is to recall answers that were used in the prior year. And the next option is to copy that information from a previous child. So kind of the example or our thinking behind that is, let's say you have a client that you've worked with for years, and you've seen their kids, you know pretty much all there is about them, and you've gathered due diligence information in the prior year. We've added this recall prior button, and if there's information from the prior year, it's going to bring over what it can, because they change the 8867 quite frequently, into the current year to help speed up some of those processes. In addition to that, on the children's information, we have a recall prior, but we also have a copy from option. So let's say you fill out information for the first child, and after talking to the taxpayer, the second, third, however many children are relatively the same. Now you can copy from another child and then make any specific adjustments to that child that might be needed. And I'll go ahead and jump into the program and just show you how that works real quick. Let's see, there you are. Okay, these are my Missouri test returns. Let me go into, let's see, let's use 14. I think they have kids, yes. And due diligence, and I've already filled it all in, but I pretend this is kind of a new client. We'll mess up some information here. So again, one of the first things is the old system is mouse free, and it still works, it's still available. So if I hit 04 here, it's going to bring up a selection, and I either hit 01 or 02 for the applicable answer. It works well, it worked well, but we feel that radio buttons with a mouse might be a little bit faster than mouse free in this particular situation. So with radio buttons, you just quickly, grab what needs to be selected after reading and actually doing the due diligence, of course. And then here's that recall prior. We do put a disclaimer that pops up every time, just because we want to do our part as a software developer to make sure that the due diligence information is getting completed accurately and per the IRS specs. I'll show you that disclaimer when we go into one of the kids here. So let's use, well, first let me show you Mary's. Hers is already done, birth certificate, did some test data on her. And David's is also done, but we'll go basically unselect some things here. Okay, so this would be kind of like David hasn't been gone into quite yet. So for him, we know that Mary's in pretty good shape. Here's the disclaimer. We just want to make sure that you guys are making your own informed decision on doing proper due diligence. So we'll say yes to that. And now I'm going to select Mary as the dependent to copy from. So we'll double click Mary, and now all that information is here. But let's say you needed to adjust, I don't know, something here. This is an older student, and it wasn't a school record, it was a healthcare provider type deal. Anyway, you still have the flexibility to make whatever changes to the due diligence that you feel needs to be made. It just is a little tool to help speed that process up significantly. All right, let's go back here and see where we're at. Yeah, e-file validation. This actually we rolled out late in 2018. So a lot of people haven't seen it, and we've added to it a little bit since then. But we wanted to roll this out in a low volume, but still get some usage, get some testing for the upcoming 2019 season. So basically, the overall e-file flow will now incorporate validation into the process, and that means both in batch electronic filing as well as the individual return if you e-file right from a single return. The program will not permit you to send tax returns that fail validation, and this has actually already saved me quite a bit of time on some of the testing for 2019, and it should save you quite a bit of time too. I had messed up, I typoed, I think it was the zip code, I don't know, I typoed something, and I had already validated most of the returns for that state that I was testing. So I went to transmit this batch off, and as you know, when you transmit, you have to wait, especially for states, a day or 2, 3 days to get the acknowledgments back and kind of see where we're at. So I went in as part of that process. It flagged it, said no, this has a schema error and it's not going to be sent. So I was able to quickly go in and figure out what was wrong, fix my typo. Instead of waiting 1 to 3 days for a rejected ACK, I was able to fix it on the spot and get that sent right off. So we kind of consider it a pretty big tool in your arsenal to get more accepted returns right off the bat, keep your overall e-file reject count down, as well as speed up just your overall processing time, because now you're not waiting for rejected ACKs that would have come back. And yeah, so let me go ahead and go back into the 1040 system and show you how that works a little bit. And I'll do both a single return as well as a batch return. Let's see. So let's go in and mess up my zip code here. And we will go through. And right off the bat, you'll see that, we automatically have a red light. But let's say you just got distracted, didn't see the red light, and just forgot to validate. It shows an error, shows a validation error. So let's go into our electronic filing for a single return, and we will e-file that. And it's going to bring up our inline validation menu. And basically, it failed transmission. Did not send the return, so now I can go ahead and fix that return. Now, in that single e-file, if you're sending returns right from this e-file page, when I click close, it's actually going to take me to the e-file validation page so that you can get more information, like our internal validation is showing an error, as well as the external validation is showing an error. So you can really nail down, where things are going wrong. On a single return, I of course could have double clicked here and gone in and fixed my zip code. But while I'm doing the batch transmission, just to show you, I'm going to leave that broken for now. So we will go in and batch e-file and go get my returns. And you know what? I'm not going to send those Missouris. Let's just send our feds. That way Missouri doesn't yell at me. Okay, so now we'll go into batch, and you'll see all these returns will go through and they'll be accepted, except it'll kick that one out to the right as a reject. So now these are all going through, and we've included 2 reports that will enable as soon as it's finished. So let's show the successful transmission log. This is kind of a nice receipt to have on handy. They kick out automatically to a PDF, but equally as important is this failed transmission report. And this is a nice report, especially if you have multiple preparers in one office, or you're working with some sort of a service bureau type where you're sharing an EFIN, but you have multiple preparers. And let's say you have like one transmitting computer, but this isn't your client. Another preparer prepared this return. So you can print out this log report, highlight it as needed, and hand it to the preparer and say, hey, your return failed schema validation. I need you to go in and fix it. Please use the internal validation, and then let me know when it's ready to retransmit. So that's a really powerful tool. While I'm thinking about it, let me go in and fix my return so I don't mess it up. All right. Yeah, so this slide's just showing you what I already showed you in the program. Another cool feature that we added to the program this year is native password protect for PDFs. An option has been added that allows you to automatically password protect your completed tax returns and your 8879s and things. And it will work hand in hand with our email generator, so that when if you use our internal email generator off the expanded info of the client grid, it'll automatically attach that completed return with some defaulted body text into the program with whatever password, either the last 4 digits of the SSN, or if you want a stronger password, you can apply a password and it will automatically be included in your PDF files. And I'll just show you where that's at. Let's go into miscellaneous features. Scroll down a little bit, and now we have this new section. So you have 2 options. If this is checked, it will apply the last 4 digits of the taxpayer's SSN. That's kind of nice, so that when you email your client and attach, whatever, let's say you're attaching 8879s, you can just use generic text and say, here's your 8879s, please get those signed and sent back to me, and the password is the last 4 digits of your SSN, which is, obviously they would know it, but nobody else should. If you do want a stronger password, more than 4 digits, then you can enter basically a generic password here that you create, but somehow you'll have to notify your client, whatever that password might be. And then option 31 is to set default email body text. This is, again, if you're using our internal email engine, it's just a time saver so that you don't have to type that body text. You can set some generic text of, thank you for coming to our office. Here's your completed return. Whatever you would like is your defaulted body text. But overall, this is the way that will work. Recall client. You're going to highlight the client that you want and then hit F2 for your expanded information. And now we've got our expanded information here, and now we're going to email a client. And as you can see, it automatically attached, in this case, my completed tax return that would be password protected had I selected it. And then my default body text is here. You can, of course, modify it, just for this one email, however you see fit. But obviously, I am not going to email that. We'll shut that down. Yeah, this is just a slide showing you what I just showed you. Some other highlights this year. The bank acknowledgments are processed and displayed right inside the eFile tracker, as well as the expanded client information. This is a really great feature. So for bank product clients, it's always been a little bit of you had to log into the website of the individual bank sometimes to know if you had an acknowledgement, if for whatever reason it didn't process through the regular bank processes. So right included in that bank integration, we include basically the status of the bank acknowledgement. So that's a really great feature. Also, another feature that we added is River City Bank. We've been working with them for years, but the integration was through their web portal, and even the bank transactions basically used a web HTTPS kind of trigger. And now we've upgraded that to basically be the same integration that we have with TPG and Refund Advantage. So basically all 3 of our banks, Refund Advantage, TPG, and River City Bank, all have the integrated bank application as well as the actual bank transactions that get transmitted. Excuse me. Yeah, actually, let me, before we get into business programs, let me just show you a couple things on the tracker. I was talking to a client the other day, and they obviously had seen the tracker, but they weren't aware of this condensed tracker tab. So the detail tracker will show you a record per every single return. So let's say you have a federal return and 2 states returns, or 3 or 4. You're going to see a Fed, a state, a state, a state, and it can get the list can get pretty long. So there's a ton of information in the expanded tab. You can of course click that and get more information. You can reprint acts, you can view the overall history. But we've also added this condensed tab, and this is what I want to show you because it was kind of surprising that a lot of people don't know it exists. So in the condensed tab, instead of a record per individual transaction, now you have 1 record per taxpayer or federal return that it's linked to. So the list becomes a bit smaller, but then we expand it off to the right. So as you can see over to the right, you still have the same information, but the overall grid is significantly smaller. So there's just a lot of power there in this condensed version. The other thing that I wanted to make you aware of is this history tab. So the history tab will show you the overall time or history of that particular return. These are test returns, so I'm transmitting quite a bit. Typically you'd have a Fed and a state, and that's probably all the history you'd have if both were accepted. The nice thing about this is, let's say your computer crashed or somebody else in the office that was sharing an EFIN picked up your acknowledgement, but you really wanted it to process through your computer. You used to have to call us and say, hey, can you rehang my ACK? Now you have the ability right here in this history tab to rehang your own ACKs. So if you click this, it'll reprocess it. It'll actually go get the ACK and then bring it back down to your computer via the appropriate EFIN number. So I just want to show you that there's quite a bit of power there. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the business programs. They've seen a huge overhaul. The biggest probably is the 1120 and 1120S. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but they've both been upgraded to our next-gen format with all the visual and functional upgrades that we had in the partnership and fiduciary program, but also we've upgraded all 4 programs to use a lot of the new cool features that are available in the 1040 program. So the first thing I'll show you is just all 4 entities, all 4 business form programs have the same current selection page, and in that page you have the same filters that we have in the 1040 program. Hopefully you guys are using those. Those are awesome. You click the buttons and it really shortens up your list. You click the reject button and you can really dial in which returns you need to fix and address your attention to. But also in the current client selection grid, you have the ability to start a client via the new client button, or double clicking and recalling a prior client. We still have the new client and prior year buttons right on the start page. We didn't get rid of those, but honestly I rarely use those anymore. I almost exclusively use this page that you're looking at now. Also in the business programs, we just kind of talked about it, but it includes the more up-to-date electronic filing system tracker, virtually identical to the 1040 program. So that's a huge enhancement. And then we also included the same validation, inline validation as the 1040 to avoid some of those additional rejects that could have been caught, but now will be caught on the back end. Now, of course, these are just validation catches. These are not business rule catches. We don't have access to the SSN database to know if a dependent was already claimed by another or any of those things. These are just validation errors that would be caught, like my SSN had a type, or I'm sorry, my zip code had a typo, or you had Schedule C items, but something happened to Schedule C and the totals don't match. Those sorts of things. I think that is all I wanted to show you at this time. Just some inside information. Our target date to release the programs for download will be December 19th. That's still tentative. It'll depend a little bit on if the IRS releases their production schemas. But right now we think they will. Looks like we're going to have a 1040 schema. Obviously e-file is not open yet, but those schemas are rather large, so we like to include the production schema in the install right off the bat. With that, I think we'll go ahead and conclude. Thank you for attending this webinar.